Letting someone go isn't simply the act of walking away or saying goodbye. It's a profound inner shift, a spiritual decision that marks the beginning of reclaiming your energy, your identity, and your path. As Carl Jung once implied through his work, the unconscious always finds a way to bring us back to wholeness, even if that means tearing apart the illusions we've built with others. When you finally decide to let someone go, it's not an act of coldness, it's an act of self-preservation, a sacred rebellion of the soul saying, I matter too. We often think that love means holding on, that if we care deeply we should fight until the end. But spiritual growth often demands the opposite. Sometimes the true act of love, for yourself and for the other person, is release. Letting go allows both souls to evolve in the direction they are meant to. When we stay in relationships that dim our light, that silence our truth, or that hold us in patterns of pain, we are not loving, we are surviving. And there comes a time when surviving isn't enough. The moment you decide to let someone go, something extraordinary begins. Internally, it's like a dam breaks. Energy that was once trapped in resentment, confusion, or longing begins to flow again. You may cry, you may grieve, and that's sacred too. Grief is not a sign of weakness. It's evidence that you showed up with your heart. But beneath that grief is something even more powerful: freedom. A whisper from your soul that says, you're finally listening. Spiritually, this moment is a wake-up call. The pain you feel isn't a punishment. It's a purge. The universe is helping you clear out what no longer serves your higher self. This isn't just about one relationship. It's about the way you've treated yourself through all of them. It's about every time you settled, stayed silent, or gave parts of your soul away to be accepted. Letting go is how you begin the journey home to yourself. Carl Jung believed in the importance of individuation, the process of becoming your true, whole self. And nothing forces individuation more powerfully than heartbreak. Because in heartbreak, we are stripped of all the masks we wore to please or protect ourselves. We are raw, real, and alone with our pain. But that's exactly where the transformation begins. That's when the unconscious comes alive through dreams, symbols, synchronicities, guiding you to understand what this pain is here to teach. You may begin to see signs, repeating numbers, powerful dreams, meaningful coincidences. These aren't just your mind playing tricks. They're signals from your deeper self, trying to help you decode the lessons behind the loss. When we let go, we make space. And in that space, the soul speaks. You begin to feel a connection to something larger than yourself, a purpose, a presence, a path. This is why spiritual awakenings often come through emotional endings. When everything familiar collapses, we are forced to face the truth. Who are we without this person? And in answering that, we begin to rediscover our essence, the version of you that existed before the heartbreak, and the version of you that's ready to rise beyond it. You will also begin to notice shifts in your body. Your energy will return. Sleep may become deeper. The tension you carried without realizing it will slowly dissolve. This is your nervous system recalibrating now that you're no longer carrying someone else's emotional weight. You are stepping out of emotional enmeshment and into emotional clarity. And yes, fear will rise. Doubts will echo. The mind will ask, what if you made a mistake? But the soul already knows. If something is meant to be, it will return. Not out of need, but from alignment. You don't need to cling to what is aligned with your destiny. Love that's meant for you will never require you to abandon yourself. This process is spiritual because it demands surrender. Not resignation, but radical trust. You don't know what comes next. You can't predict the healing timeline. But you can choose to trust that what's leaving your life is making space for something far more true. And in that trust, you begin to anchor yourself in something real, not the illusion of control, but the reality of inner peace. This first part of letting go is about honoring the shift, giving yourself permission to hurt, to rest, to reflect. You don't have to move on overnight. You don't have to fake a smile. You are allowed to break, and in doing so, break open. Because the end of this chapter is the beginning of a deeper one, and the more fully you allow yourself to feel, the more completely you will heal. So if you've let someone go, or you're on the verge of doing so, let this be your reminder. You are not alone. The universe is not punishing you. You are shedding, you are rising, and something within you already knows. This pain has a purpose, not to destroy you, but to return you to yourself. Letting go of someone you deeply care about, whether it's a romantic partner, a friend, or even a family member, leaves behind a noticeable silence. It's a pause in the soul, a stillness that at first feels like an absence. But Carl Jung would tell you that within that emptiness lies the very heart of transformation. This is not just grief. It is the creation of sacred space. Spiritually, this is the vacuum where the ego dissolves and the higher self begins to whisper. You might expect immediate relief or a quick sense of freedom after cutting ties with someone who no longer belongs in your life. But instead, you are met with silence. A quiet so profound it's almost deafening. That silence is not empty. It is full of potential. The spiritual world understands that growth rarely happens in noise and chaos. Real healing happens in stillness. Jung often spoke of the importance of turning inward, of confronting the shadow self, and in that process, the soul must first find solitude. This moment of silence is the beginning of sacred realignment. Your spirit is not lost. It is listening for something it couldn't hear while tangled in the needs, demands, and expectations of another person. Jung wrote, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." That awakening begins with withdrawal, not from the world, but from entanglements that no longer align with your essence. What's happening spiritually at this stage is detox. You are purging not just memories and attachments, but energy cords. These invisible threads connect us to people at the level of the soul. And when those cords are unhealthy, built on neediness, control, or unresolved trauma, they drain our life force. Cutting those cords may feel like losing part of yourself, but in truth, you're reclaiming it. The fatigue you feel, that's your soul recharging. And then something strange happens. In the absence of the other, you start hearing your own voice again. A voice that was silenced under layers of compromise and people-pleasing. A voice that knows exactly who you are and what you're here for. This is the emergence of authenticity, the return of the self, as Jung would put it. But the re-emergence of the self is not painless. You will feel disoriented. You may even mourn the future you once imagined with this person. And that's okay. Mourning is sacred. Spiritually, it means honoring what was while making space for what can be. In fact, it is this mourning that refines the soul. It strips you of illusion, and in doing so, it prepares you for truth. Here is the paradox. Letting go feels like losing something, but in reality you're making space for everything your soul truly desires. You are telling the universe, "I am ready for what's real." And the universe listens. The spiritual shift also reveals something powerful. You begin to recognize how much of your identity was wrapped in this connection. Who were you trying to be for them? Who did you become to keep their love? These are confronting questions, but necessary ones, because the more you answer them, the more clearly you'll see yourself. And seeing yourself truly is a spiritual awakening of the highest order. As you detach, the energy that once went outward returns inward. This is not selfishness. This is reclamation. You begin to invest in your dreams again, your passions, your purpose. Your soul feels lighter because it is no longer carrying someone else's emotional weight. And from this place of lightness, new insights arrive. A new version of you begins to form, not out of pain, but from wisdom. And that wisdom teaches you. Not everyone is meant to stay. Some people are meant to arrive, show you something important, sometimes through love, other times through pain, and then leave. Their purpose in your life was never permanence. It was revelation. So don't rush to fill the silence. Don't numb the emptiness. Sit in it, honor it. For it is here, in this sacred vacuum, that your next chapter is being written. It's not visible yet, but your soul knows. And when it's time, the right energy, the right people, the right direction will find you. Because you are no longer lost in someone else's story. You are finally beginning to write your own. There comes a moment, often silent and unannounced, when the storm passes. After the release, after the tears, after the agony of detachment, what follows is not just peace, it is presence. Letting someone go is not only about removing them from your life. It's about creating space for something deeper. Carl Jung believed that our unconscious guides us toward healing, even when we don't understand the path. And in that sacred stillness, after letting go, your soul begins to whisper the truth you've been avoiding, that you were never meant to carry everyone with you. Spiritually, the moment you let go is the moment you reclaim your power. It's when you stop begging to be understood and instead begin to understand yourself. You stop hoping they'll come back and instead start returning to your own soul. You stop trying to fix them and finally begin to heal yourself. This is not selfishness. It is spiritual survival. In the space left behind by what you released, something powerful begins to grow. Your awareness heightens. You start seeing things more clearly. You begin to recognize who was draining your energy and who was nourishing it. You start to differentiate between love and attachment, between need and alignment. And this clarity doesn't come from thinking harder. It emerges from being still, from facing your inner world without distraction. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is what letting go allows. It gives you the opportunity to meet yourself. Because much of the pain we carry in relationships comes from the roles we unconsciously assume. The rescuer, the martyr, the caretaker, the savior. When the relationship ends, we mourn not just the person, but the identity we built around them. But in mourning, there is awakening. You begin to realize how often you silenced your truth to keep peace. How many times you ignored red flags because your heart was too hopeful. How often you feared being alone more than being drained. But now that you've let go, the loneliness you feared turns out to be a myth. What you feared was not solitude, but facing yourself without distraction. Now in this space, you finally hear your soul. This is the real spiritual transformation. You begin to return to yourself. You discover forgotten dreams, hidden passions, and parts of you that were buried under compromise. The world starts to look different because your lens has changed. You're no longer looking for validation, but for authenticity. You are no longer chasing love, but becoming it. And the ironic thing is, once you stop needing someone to complete you, you become whole. And wholeness attracts everything meant for you. Letting go doesn't just free you from someone else. It frees you from the illusion that you are not enough on your own. And that's a lesson many never learn. Some spend their whole lives clinging to others, fearing the emptiness that follows. But those who are brave enough to walk away when it's time, those who choose growth over comfort, become the most powerful people you'll ever meet. Because they've met themselves in the fire and they came out golden. You may still miss them. You may still feel waves of grief. That's okay. But grief is not a sign you made the wrong choice. It's a sign you cared. And you can care deeply while still choosing to release. You can love someone and still know they don't belong in your future. That paradox is what makes us human. And mastering that paradox is what makes us wise. Jung also believed that the soul doesn't just evolve through light, but through shadow. Letting go is one of the most shadowy, painful acts we face. But on the other side of that darkness is freedom, the kind of freedom that no one else can give you, the kind that is earned through tears, courage, and brutal honesty. So if you're in the midst of letting go, or if you're still recovering from the process, be proud of yourself. You've done something most people avoid. You've faced the void and realized it wasn't empty after all. It was full of your potential. And now that the weight is gone, you can rise. This space, this quiet, this new version of you. It's not the end. It's the beginning. Letting go of someone doesn't just end a chapter. It awakens a new identity. And this is one of the most spiritually transformative aspects of the journey. In the silence that follows loss, when all the noise of validation and attachment fades, you begin to hear a different voice, the one that has been buried beneath years of compromise, fear, and dependency. That voice is you, the real you, and it has waited patiently for the moment when your soul could finally rise without being dimmed by someone else's expectations. Carl Jung believed that the journey toward wholeness requires the integration of all aspects of the self, especially those parts we've repressed or hidden to keep peace in a relationship. When you let go, the false self, the version of you that bent to please, to avoid rejection, to fit into someone else's world, begins to die. And that's not a loss, that is liberation. Suddenly your time, your thoughts, your energy, all return to you. And in that return, something miraculous happens. You begin to dream again. Not just literal dreams, but visions of what your life could look like, on your own terms. This is the soul speaking. This is your deeper self reminding you. You were not born to orbit around someone else's light. You were born to shine in your own sky. This phase can feel uncertain, even painful. When you've given so much of yourself to another person, it's natural to feel disoriented when they're gone. But don't confuse emptiness with loss. It's a space for rebirth. This is your spiritual cocoon. You're no longer the person who once clung to what no longer served them. You're evolving, you're shedding skins, illusions, and fears. And what emerges is raw, real, powerful. In Jungian terms, this is the confrontation with the self. Not the ego, which seeks approval and fears abandonment, but the self, which stands firmly rooted in truth, integrity, and inner strength. This version of you doesn't beg for love. It radiates it, from within. It doesn't ask to be chosen. It chooses itself, over and over again. As you walk this spiritual path, Something else starts to change. Your standards. You no longer chase after people who can't meet you where you are. You stop trying to convince others of your worth. You no longer feel the need to hold on to someone out of fear of being alone. You begin to realize that loneliness isn't the absence of people. It's the absence of connection to yourself. And now, you're reconnecting. The most beautiful part? You begin to attract differently. When you're aligned with your truth, you stop resonating with those who only recognized your wounds. Instead, you begin to magnetize those who recognize your light. You attract people who see you, not the mask you wore to be loved, but the truth you finally stepped into. And it's in this state of alignment that your soul feels peace. Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." This is the awakening. This is what happens when you stop being afraid to release what's not meant for you. The spiritual shift is not about bitterness or detachment. It's about stepping into a version of yourself that is no longer afraid to lose what was never fully yours. You begin to realize that the greatest love story is the one you write with yourself. So now you walk forward, not in search of someone to complete you, but in search of all the parts of yourself you abandoned along the way. You reclaim your voice, your power, your peace. You forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you do. You stop rehearsing the past and start rehearsing a future that reflects your truth. Letting go becomes less about them and more about what it opens within you. Because on the spiritual path, everything that falls away reveals something eternal underneath. And that eternal thing is you, unbreakable, worthy, whole. When you finally let someone go, not just physically, but energetically, you will enter what Carl Jung might call the sacred void. This is the inner stillness after the storm, the hollow space where the noise of past attachments has finally died down. It's not just silence, it's a sacred silence. And within this silence, everything begins again. But let's be clear, this part of the journey can feel devastating. You are no longer who you were, and the person you loved is no longer part of your inner world. The habits, the thoughts, the emotional rhythms built around them have collapsed. And yet instead of panic, you begin to feel a strange calmness, a type of spiritual quiet you may have never known. You start to see that this emptiness is not a punishment. It's a purification. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In this sacred void, you're no longer being unconsciously driven by the energy of old bonds. You're learning to sit with yourself fully. This is the womb of transformation. The pain is real, but so is the birth of a new self. Letting go creates space. It allows suppressed emotions to finally rise, not to destroy you, but to free you. You cry, not because you are weak, but because something deep is being released. You feel a strange numbness, not from despair, but from the absence of chaos. This is the peace your soul has longed for, and it comes only when you stop chasing what has already left. Many people fear this void and rush to fill it, with distractions, new relationships, or noise. But if you stay, if you breathe through it, if you trust it, something extraordinary begins to happen. You begin to see yourself, not through the lens of who you were in that relationship, but as a soul on its own sacred path. Spiritually, this is the phase of realignment. Your energy begins to reorganize. Your nervous system recalibrates. The wounds begin to heal, not because someone else came to rescue you, but because you finally stopped resisting your own inner world. You return to your center. This phase is where real spiritual growth begins. You may find yourself reflecting more, dreaming vividly, feeling synchronicities returning. Nature seems to speak louder. Music feels deeper. Time slows down. This is the universe whispering that you're on the right path. Your soul is no longer leaking energy. You're whole. From Jungian perspective, this phase may represent integration. The shadow has been faced, the part of you that feared being alone, that clung for validation, that needed to be needed. And now, that part is no longer ruling you. You are becoming conscious, and consciousness is power. You start to reclaim your creative energy. The energy once consumed by overthinking, overgiving, or overcompensating for someone else's absence now flows into your art, your vision, your voice. This is where people begin to notice a shift in you. You glow differently. You speak with more intention. You walk with more clarity. And it has nothing to do with external validation. It's because you met yourself in the void, and you didn't run away. The sacred void doesn't last forever. It's a liminal space, a space between death and rebirth. And once the spiritual lessons are integrated, life begins to blossom again. But this time, it's not about attracting love from a place of lack. It's about radiating love from a place of wholeness. Letting go spiritually was never just about removing someone else. It was about returning to yourself. And now, you're not just free. You are ready. Ready to receive what aligns. Ready to embody the lessons. Ready to move forward, not from a broken heart, but from an awakened one. So if you're in that quiet place right now, where everything feels too still, too empty, don't fear it, don't try to escape it. Trust that this emptiness is sacred. It's not the end. It's the beginning of everything. As you begin to understand the deeper spiritual significance of letting go, you enter a phase of profound transformation. This is the moment when you reclaim your true self. Carl Jung believed that one of the most important aspects of human growth was the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming your most authentic self. This journey involves confronting the parts of yourself that you have denied, ignored, or suppressed. When you let someone go, you create space not just for healing, but for the emergence of a more genuine version of who you are. Often relationships, even those that were deeply meaningful, require you to suppress parts of yourself. Maybe you didn't fully express your needs or desires, or you molded yourself to fit the expectations of another. Letting go opens the door for you to rediscover who you are beyond the role you played in that relationship. But this journey to self-discovery isn't easy. It requires you to look inward and confront parts of yourself you may have been avoiding. Jung spoke about the importance of the shadow, those aspects of the self that are hidden, often because they are difficult to face. Letting go of someone forces you to face those parts of yourself that were once masked by the needs of the relationship. At first, this can feel uncomfortable. You may question your identity, your worth, or your purpose. But over time, this discomfort will give way to a deeper sense of self-awareness and self-acceptance. By facing the shadow, you are no longer hiding from the parts of you that need love and attention. Instead, you are learning to integrate them into your whole being, creating a more authentic and empowered version of yourself. Jungian psychology teaches us that to achieve true freedom, we must break free from the external expectations and influences that shape us. When you let go of someone, you are, in essence, breaking free from the attachment that has held you back. This liberation allows you to embrace the full range of your potential and to live in alignment with your truest self. You no longer have to seek validation from others. You are enough as you are, and you begin to see the world through a lens of self-compassion rather than self-doubt. The freedom that comes with letting go isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. As you let go of old attachments, you free yourself from the energetic patterns that once tethered you to a past version of yourself. Your energy becomes your own again, and you find that you are more present in your life, more connected to your intuition, and more open to new opportunities. The universe, it seems, rewards those who are brave enough to trust the process of letting go. You begin to attract people, experiences, and opportunities that are aligned with your true self, rather than the version of you that was shaped by external influences. Jung's concept of the self, the total integrated being that transcends the ego, comes into play here. When you let go of what no longer serves you, you are making room for the emergence of your authentic self. You are no longer defined by past relationships, fears, or doubts. You begin to live from a place of wholeness and inner peace, understanding that your worth isn't dependent on the approval of others, but on your connection to your own soul. This spiritual freedom can feel like a release. It's the liberation of your spirit from the confines of past attachments. It's as though you have been wearing a heavy cloak, one that was never really yours, and now you can finally take it off. The air feels lighter, the world seems brighter, and you can breathe more freely. You start to understand that letting go doesn't mean loss. In fact, it's the opposite. It's an act of creation. You are creating space for something more expansive, something more aligned with who you are becoming. And as you continue to evolve, you'll realize that the person you were in that past relationship was not the whole of you. You were merely a version of yourself, shaped by circumstances. Now you are becoming the fullest expression of your being, no longer confined by someone else's narrative. So, if you are in the process of letting go, whether it's of a person, a place, or a part of yourself, know that this is the most powerful thing you can do for your spiritual growth. Embrace the discomfort, the emptiness, and the uncertainty. Trust that this is the space where you are being reborn, and that every step you take forward is one of liberation. The journey is not easy, but it is worth it. As Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. In letting go, you are taking the first steps toward that privilege. You are choosing to be free. You are choosing to be yourself.